This upcoming week's pre-order is two of the three Chaos factions that we've been waiting for. The World Eaters and the Death Guard are both getting their new army boxes, their new combat patrols and everything like that, which you will be able to pre-order from Saturday. The Thousand Suns look like they may need to wait a little bit longer, which is a shame, but they are still coming very, very soon. They are obviously just doing the Death Guard and the World Eaters first. But whilst we're going to take a look at the new combat patrols for the Death Guard and the World Eaters in a video very, very soon, because spoiler alert, they're both actually really, really good. But in this video today, we're going to be taking a look at our first set of previews that GW have thrown our way. And today it is the time for the slow, pondering forces of the upcoming Death Guard. Now, one of the biggest immediate changes to note is that the army rule of Nurgle's Gift has been expanded in really quite an impactful way. It still has that aura effect where you have a 3-inch contagion range in the first battle round, moving up to 6 inches in the second, and then moving to 9 inches from the third battle round onwards, and any enemy unit that is within range is afflicted. But whereas before in the index, the army rule simply gave them -1 to their toughness, and then you had a separate detachment, which was called the Plague Company, that gave you those really nice extra debuffs from the Spread the Sickness rule, they have now been combined all into the main army rule. So what that means is now your army rule is really quite scary. It gives you that ever-growing aura that inflicts not only -1 toughness to enemy units, but also gives you a choice of 3 plagues to further debuff the enemy. Now, like they were in the Index Detachment, the plagues themselves are mostly the same. They've had a few changes, but they are mostly familiar to what we knew from the Index. The Skull Squirm Blight now reduces enemy hit rolls by 1 rather than dropping the weapon and ballistic skill, so that's a slight change, but essentially means it doesn't stack with things like stealth or other -1 to hit modifiers anymore, so you could say that's caught a nerf a little bit, but it is still really, really good. It's still a very solid way to add more durability to your units as you move up the board and get enemies in contagion range. And obviously when you are in combat, you are essentially always going to be -1 to be hit if you have this plague. The Rattle Joint Ague, this is probably still my favourite. What this one does is still drops the enemy armour save characteristic by 1. So it makes Marines drop from a 3-up save to a 4-up. Even things like Terminators and Custodes will be now dropping from a 2-up save to a 3-up save. So this is incredibly strong. As I said, probably the best of the choices out of the 3, to be honest. It essentially gives you an army-wide +1 AP on all your weapons when you are attacking an enemy in contagion range. And then we get to the final one. This is the one that's actually changed most. It's actually just got a flat buff. The Scabrous Soul Rot has now changed. It used to just drop enemy units leadership and OC by 1, which was always a bit, it's useful and it has a lot of utility, but it was probably the worst of the 3. Now, I would say it still is the worst and the least exciting out of the 3 options, but it has got better. It now drops the enemy units leadership and OC by 1, but also drops their movement by 1 as well. So it does drop 3 relatively important enemy stats, and you can really use this if you go for this plague to bog down an enemy and make it much, much harder for them to not only score and hold objectives, but also pass any battle shock or leadership tests they need to take. So they are all very, very useful, and I think the fact that they are now baked into your army rule makes them all incredibly strong. Of course, that not being a detachment rule anymore means, as they say in the article, that frees up the other detachments to do some other things. And they give us a tease at 2 of the upcoming detachments. The first one is a very tank or vehicle heavy one, which is called Mortarion's Hammer. And this brings the rule Miasmic Bombardment to the field. And what that does is it allows you to pick a number of units, depending on the battle size at the start of the battle round, which are more than 12 inches away from any models in your army, and they get debuffed with that affliction rule for the battle round. So even if you've got a really far away enemy unit that is sat back holding an objective, that has got some long range guns, so you're never going to be able to get it within contagion range, or at least you're not going to be able to easily get it in contagion range, you can still debuff it with the afflicted debuff and give it -1 toughness and then whatever plague you chose as well. So you can potentially, to use an example, say they've got some Chaos Space Marine Havocs that are sat back with some las cannons, so you're really going to have a hard time getting near them. You can just choose them as the target of this, and they are now -1 toughness and -1 to their save if you go for that plague. And it's just really good for helping you get rid of those pesky backfield units that can just pepper you all game long and you can't do much about, or even just an enemy unit that you know is just biding its time and waiting for a good opportunity to move up and get a charge into you. You can make it so that you can much more easily whittle that unit down and kill a few off, so that when they do make the charge, they are going to do a lot less damage to you. And putting this onto something like a Marine squad that is getting ready to move up and make a charge, maybe some jump pack Marines or some jump pack intercessors and that kind of thing, you can now make them -1 toughness and -1 save. So even stuff like your regular bolter fire will now be wounding them on 3s rather than 4s and dropping them to a 4-up save. So you can kill a lot of enemy models and units that are even quite far away from you that thought they were maybe safe from your contagion range. So I really like this. I think it's fantastically strong for getting that debuff on some other units that you may struggle to normally get it on, and then you can just focus your fire on them and just really take out huge chunks of enemy units that thought they were safe. I think the fact that you can put this on multiple units as well, because it does depend on the game size, but in your standard Strike Force game, you can pick 2 units, and that's actually really good. So you can choose 2 separate units that are really far away or spread away from your army that you are going to struggle to get to, debuff them, and just really put the hurt on them while the rest of your army moves up into the midfield and starts spreading that debuff onto the other enemy units that are a bit closer to you. So it's really, really good, and I think this detachment is, just on the face of it, an incredibly strong one. On top of that, they also showed us an enhancement and a stratagem. You get a very cheeky ignores cover rule against afflicted targets thanks to the Eye of Affliction enhancement, and this makes ranged weapons in the bearer's unit ignore cover against afflicted targets. So now, against that faraway enemy that was hiding in some ruins maybe, you can, in theory, make them -1 toughness, -1 to their save, and not get any benefits of cover. So it's a potentially incredibly strong, scary combo that anything from your regular bolter fire to your long-range tanks and Plague Burst Crawler and all your long-range vehicles can really take advantage of to throw just an ungodly amount of firepower into some distant enemy squads. What I also like about this detachment and what we see in one of the stratagems is that there are a lot of strats focused around buffing your vehicles, and the one they show in this preview today is Font of Filth. It's 1 command point and it gives a vehicle in your shooting phase the assault rule on its weapons. So now even your typically slow moving Death Guard can actually get around the board much more quickly, and you get that extra d6 inches of movement on your vehicles and can still fire all of your scary weaponry from things like your Blight Haulers or even your Plague Burst Mortars from your Plague Burst Crawlers will now have a much more impactful threat range to get some damage into enemy units. So I'm already quite sold on this detachment. I think it seems really, really fun. I love the idea of spreading that contagion onto some faraway backfield units that thought they were safe, and it does just seem to have already some fairly nice strats and enhancements to really help you pour the firepower onto them and just move up and get nice and comfy in the midfield, which is what Death Guard want to do, and just hold it and then dare the enemy to come to you. The other detachment we get shown today is another very fun one, but I think it seems probably a little bit less competitive just on the face of it, but it is completely different in style to the Mortarion's Hammer one. Instead of vehicles, this one is all about your slow, shambling poxwalkers. And the numberless horde rule, which comes in the detachment the Shamblerot Vectorium, that allows you to bring a few free units of poxwalkers over the course of the battle. So what you get to do is you get to bring a unit of 10 poxwalkers onto the battlefield in certain battle rounds, depending on the game size. So in an incursion game, you bring that unit of 10 on in battle rounds 2 and 3, whilst in a strike force, it's battle rounds 2, 3, and 4, and then in your bigger onslaught games, you actually get to bring a unit on in battle rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's quite a lot of extra units. Using current points, a unit of 10 poxwalkers is 50 points, so in your 2000 point strike force game, that is essentially netting you 150 points worth of free models, which actually isn't too bad. And what they can do is they can come on. You do bring them on from strategic reserve, so you are still kind of limited in how and where they come on, but you can use that to score you some secondaries or get near and score you some objectives, or to just come on and act as a distraction to the enemy. And I mean, yes, they're poxwalkers, they're not going to last that long, they're probably not going to kill much, but the power in this is it's going to be something your enemy is going to have to think about, have to watch out for, and will have to plan around. And if they get complacent or they don't plan around it, you could very easily get yourself a lot of extra victory points by bringing these guys on in just the right points to get you some secondaries or some objectives. So you can certainly force the enemy to be a bit more cagey than they otherwise would have been, or just put the pressure on them and kind of wait for them to make mistakes while they're trying to guess where your poxwalkers are going to come on from, and then use that to your advantage in those battle rounds to bring them on where it's going to benefit you the most. So I don't think it's as good as Mortarion's hammer, but it does have a lot of potential, and if you like that poxwalker sort of endless horde of zombie style play, that definitely will help you get that feeling quite well, I think. Equally, on the side of the enhancements and the strats for this detachment, they are mainly focused around supporting and boosting your poxwalkers more. So the Witherbone pipes are an enhancement that can go on a Noxious Blightbringer, and whilst he is leading a unit of poxwalkers, they get +1 to their OC value, and they also get +1 to any leadership or battle shock test that they have to make. Now, you know what I'm going to say? That's not really amazing. I imagine this will probably be quite a cheap enhancement. It could, in theory, make a unit of poxwalkers just a bit more resilient and reliable at holding an objective and being actually useful for you. But I'm going to be honest with you, I can't imagine this enhancement being used all that much unless the other ones are really, really bad. The strat, however, by comparison, does seem really good. The strat is called Shambling Wall, and in the enemy shooting phase, you can pick a Death Guard unit that was targeted by the enemy shooting attacks, and a Poxwalker unit that is within 3 inches of it, and also visible to that enemy unit. And essentially, instead of your Death Guard unit taking the damage, you don't get to make any saving rolls or anything, but the damage just goes straight through onto your Poxwalkers, so they act as this meat shield, this guaranteed meat shield, and they just get shot to pieces while leaving things like your more valuable Plague Marines or Terminators to actually survive to do some shooting or charge into combat. So it's actually a really quite strong defensive tool. If you are worried about some high strength, high damage shooting and you've got that unit of Poxwalkers nearby, even just a minimum unit of 10 is essentially 10 bonus ablative wounds that the enemy needs to get through before they can start hurting your more important units. So it does have a lot of use. You may not always want to use it if you are kind of comfortable relying on your 2-up save from things like your Terminators against bolter fire, but against some actual damaging shots that could hurt your Terminators, this could be great to use just to kill off a cheap squad of Poxwalkers and keep those Terminators alive. So 2 really quite different but quite fun detachments. I do have to say I think Mortarion's hammer is my favourite so far, but we do also get told that there are going to be 6 in total, and the others range from the Champions of Contagion, who get to apparently swap their chosen plague each battle round, which could make them incredibly fun and versatile depending on where you are on the board and what you are fighting. There is, of course, the demon-focused one, which is the Taliban Summoners. This works to spread your contagion range even further around the board and presumably help you to just summon more and more demons onto the battlefield, whilst the Death Lord's Chosen is focused on your Terminators, and what they say about this one is that it has a particularly powerful plague, so potentially really boosting up your Terminators and making it so that if you wanted to run this Terminator heavy list, you could do that and actually do quite well with them. So I'm quite hyped for this. All told, I think what we've seen today is quite positive and exciting. There is, of course, a lot more to dig into, but so far, I think it's actually looking fairly strong. I love the addition to the army rule. I think that makes the army rule really quite impactful and powerful. And I think just on the face of it, the Mortarion's hammer detachment seems incredibly fun, and I think incredibly strong for being able to spread those debuffs to basically any unit on the board. As always though, I'd love to know your thoughts on the Death Guard so far and which of the detachments you think is going to be the best or the most fun to play. Let me know all your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, but until next time, I'll catch you later guys.